Good morning. We're going to talk about the grayscale this morning and how we transfer from this side, from the values from this side. How do we know if we're right looking from this side to that side? How do you know what value is in this forehead versus the value that we should have over in the drawing? Because it can get a little tricky, a little difficult, because you see this big white area over here, and then this area that's pretty dark. I mean, every part of this place is dark. And one of the things we talked about in class was that even in this light area up here in his forehead, it isn't white. And so I'm going to just take this gray scale. This is, I think there's 20 grays in this scale here. And all you do is, what we're going to do is compare the grays in an area. So we're going to pick this spot right in here. This looks to be about the lightest area, and we're going to compare it to the different values of this grayscale. And if we look at it, you remember when we said to squint, and if you squint at it, you can see that right about here it matches. In other words, the background blends right into the grayscale. Let me just zoom in here so you can see a little closer to what I'm talking about. Right here is the color of the reference, and right here is the gray that matches it. If you notice, there is virtually no line between them. So I'm going to do this with the digital, once again with my digital drawing, and I'm going to just, all I'm going to do is sample that, which means I've just copied that color onto my brush, so to speak. And I'm just going to fill in, because that is the lightest value in this whole thing. It's fairly safe, because it is the lightest value, to let me get it in here. Because it's the lightest value, you can kind of put it everywhere without having any problems. It'll be, in other words, the darks will go over the light. So I'm going to fill this in, and I'll be right back. So I quick filled that in, and now we're going to just find the darkest part of this picture. And obviously the darkest parts are in where his hair. Oops. Had a technical glitch there. So we're going to find the darkest areas on here, and obviously the darkest areas are going to be in this hair, and here in the hair, virtually every place there's hair, and in the eyes. If you look in there, the eyes are going to be some of the darkest areas. So we'll come in here and we'll match these. We'll see which value that is, and if we get in real close again, we can see that hair blends right in almost with the black. Now yours is going to be a little different. This is a digital visual thing. Yours is going to be a little bit different than that because it's going to be on paper. But as you can see down here in this area, up here in the eye, if we go up here in the eye, look at the darknesses. They're pretty close to that bottom end. So what we're going to do is just transfer. I tend to like to start with doing my darks. I really do. I'll put a little gray down in general, and then I will come back and put in my darks. So I'm going to do that and come back in a second, okay? So I'm going to put in a few more gray. I'm going to match a few more grays here. Oops, put that back to where it was. I'm going to match a few more grays here, and just to give you the idea. And then I'm going to show you a little bit about what I'm looking for with the soft edges and hard edges. So one more value. If you look at one of the things that's really making this an interesting thing to look at is this background. Now over here there's almost no background, so I'm just going to do a quick match, and if you look at this background over here, much lighter than over here. So let's take a look here. see how dark this is over here? This part of this is black here, so this gray area is definitely going to be a lot less. It's going to be right, let's see, where are we at here? If you once again squint at this, right about in here is where this background and this blend. And so we'll just sample that. And I'm going to bring it over here. Oops. On that one. Bring it over here on this area. Fill in just a little bit. Now I have the dark areas on a layer, so it won't get covered up by this. And likewise on this dark side. Oops. I'm gonna do a quick. Had to do a quick pause there. This switching back between layers is I'm starting to draw a little bit on certain layers that I'm not supposed to. So now we're going to move this over here. Let's look how dark it is over here on this part of the grayscale. So once again we look at it, and right about in here looks pretty close to me. So I'll sample that out. Pick up my brush again, and I'll just fill that in real quick. And that gives us a little bit of an idea of that background. It's not totally complete for sure, but it just fills in a few values. And now I'm going to do one more on his face over here. We'll match one more up, and then I'm going to do a whole bunch, well, and back away and just fill in a whole bunch of this real quick. Okay, but let's match this one more up, okay? We'll zoom in real tight. We'll pull this grayscale over. And it doesn't really matter where you want to look at in here somewhere. So let's just choose right in here. So right about in there is what looks to me like it's just a straight blend. Then I come over to my reference. Whoops. Once again, a layer shifted on me. Once again, had a little bit of a layer shift there, so I'm back where I was. So I'll just lay down a little bit of that gray in here. Oops. Try that again. So lay that in there, and believe it or not, that looks dark, doesn't it? It looks dark. But that area right in here, that is the value of it. That is its value. I'll just put it in a few places where it looks like it's at. Looks where it is, where it looks like that value is for me. Maybe just a hair bit in here, a little bit over here. It's a little dark here, but it's not too far off. And maybe just a tad bit down in this area. And I think that'll do it. I'm gonna fill in several of these areas, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the soft edges. Okay. Okay, so I've filled in a lot of the areas now with the values, the general values, and as you can see, we'll take this the grayscale and move it around, and you can see that the different places where the grays have been filled in and moved over in this area. Here, just a second. In general, you can just see how I've selected out these values, transferred them over, and made general blocks of color. Now, this is how you do it with paint, and in pencil you have to do this a little bit more, building up with light to dark. And so generally in pencils I'm going to be doing the dark areas first, and in these areas, and then I start to build up the grays from the lighter areas, and I move down back to the darks. And really, depending on the portrait, sometimes you go the other direction. I wish there was a ironclad rule, but I tend to like to establish my blacks, the darkest part of my pictures. That's what I like to know where that is. And then if I know where my lightest area is, then that kind of gives me a path for where everything else is in between. So that's what I'm kind of giving you the advice for. Get a gray value over the whole of it, especially in the face. Hit your darks really good so you know that they're close. Match them up against your grayscale. And then it makes everything else seem like it's a little bit more manageable. You're not doing a whole lot of guessing. So I painted this thing out when I shouldn't say I painted it out, but I digitally used my my smearing and blending tools here, which is basically tools like this, so I could kind of blend things around, more like what you can do with a pencil. And in doing so, then I ended up doing this right here. So here's where, if you take it all the way as far as you want, you can blend things out and take it quite a bit further. Now, obviously, this is a fairly quick done. I've got several things I can look at, especially in this mustache where it's incorrect. That hairline's a little off, as opposed to over here. Don't have quite the detail up in here, but you can kind of get the idea. Where if you start with those darks and know where your lights are, then you can kind of just fill in the pieces in here, okay? Last thing I want to talk about one more time, and we discussed it a little bit in class, but I definitely want to hit it one more time, is when you're doing a portrait, you want to find something that you can focus on and draw a lot of interest in. In portraits, hey, where it is right here. Eyes, nose, mouth, that is the most important part of any portrait. Obviously, are those characters, and it's hard to know anything about a person without those parts done well. And one thing you find is, as a object goes around a corner, notice around this, as it goes around the end of an edge like a nose, you get these soft edges in here. You get soft edges. Over here, you get soft edges. If you look up here in this ear, right as the background hits the ear, it just almost blends together. One of the things I was telling you, it's very important with hair. Observe hair very carefully. Here, a fairly sharp line, right? You can see a fairly sharp line through here, but look what's taking place up here. All of a sudden, you got flesh that's going into the hair that's going into the flesh. And so it becomes this blending, softening of an edge. Likewise in here, and in here, around the edges here. Mouths, there's no line here. I'm telling you, you're going to have a lot of disappointment if you put strong lines right in here around the mouth. These are nice, soft, slowly handled areas right through here, so be very careful. This is much more in shadow, so it looks a little bit stronger lines here. Keep those things in mind. Noses, if you put too many harsh lines around noses, your attention goes to the nose. Detail draws attention. So keep that detail here. Keep it here. In general, obviously I said that noses are important, and they are, but lines, sharp edges draw attention. So if you start putting sharp edges in here, your eyes are going to go right to this nose. So, and most people don't want to draw attention to their nose, even if they've got a beautiful one. So, I think that's it. You guys have a great day.